Hi, this week we're going to be going over Chapter 7, Controlling Food Costs During Production. We'll describe the tools that managers use to estimate food production levels, explain how managers monitor food quality, detail how managers monitor the food production process, detail how managers monitor the beverage production process, and explain how managers monitor beverage quality. So your most basic tool for controlling production costs is the sales forecast. It is critical to estimate both the number of covers for the next period as well as the menu mix. So the two things that you'll need are the sales history and the menu mix. So the sales history is the best predictor of what's going to happen in the future. The more data a manager can review, the better they can forecast. And when it comes to the menu mix, the managers need to compute the popularity index, and it will be a big help in the meal planning. It can be used to predict the amount that needs to be made of each item for the meal period. So when you're thinking about developing the production schedule, this chart provides vital information that a staff needs to know exactly what and how much to prepare. Records of these help gauge production the next time that certain items or combination of items are served. So if you look at this sample that we have here, this is a very good sample. So they specified the day, and that's going to be important because you don't have the same sales as Monday as you do Friday. Also let you know the date, the weather, any events going on around you, and then your customer forecast. So you have all this historical data all in here along with what your sales are. So look here, you have your items. In this particular example, they have recipe numbers. Percentage, honestly, I'm not sure. I even read through the book trying to figure out what they were calling for percentages. But they have what you're preparing, so, and then the sales and leftovers. So the chicken a la king, they made 40 servings of it. They only sold 38. They had 2 left over. So this is a really important tool to be able to use. This helps, with your forecast. So like we kind of just talked about before, you enter the name of the dish and how many portions. And pull the recipes for production, review them, make sure that they are up to date, and deliver the recipes to the correct people. Supervise for compliance and check that everyone is working to the standards that have been set. And then follow through by checking on the number of portions that were yielded by that particular recipe. Now we don't always need a full recipe. So we either adjust, also known as scaling, standardized recipe portions. So it's important to produce only what is anticipated to sell. To do so, sometimes the recipe yield needs to be changed. Either it could be you need to make less or you need to make more. And you're going to do that by using a conversion factor. So you want to, first step is to determine the conversion factor. Change the recipe ingredients amounts to ounces or other standard weight measurements. For example, change pounds into ounces. Multiply each ingredient by the conversion factor. To convert the ingredient amount back to the original recipe's format. For instance, change ounces back to pounds. So to find the conversion factor, you take your desired yield and divide it by your current yield. From there, you take that conversion factor and then multiply it by the current ingredient amount, and then you'll get your desired amount. So if you look on the example in the book, I believe it was, they're changing 50 to 40. Yeah, so their desired yield for this one was 40, but the recipe yields 50. So it gives you a conversion factor of 0.8. So if we take the chicken, for example, the recipe calls for 8 pounds. They moved it into ounces and then multiplied by the 0.8, and then they ended up with 102.4. Then they multiplied that by the 16, because there's 16 ounces in a pound, and it gave it to 6.25. Now, not everything will need to be converted into a new amount. It all depends on the recipe that you are using. So calculating the yield amount. Working with the recipes means you need to understand exactly what the yields are. If the recipe does not produce that correct yield, it can cause waste, not just in food, but also the labor that you spent on making the recipe. And to create more accurate recipe and plate costs, keep recipes and cost sheets current. Now, sometimes a recipe will not yield what it should, and you might decide to change the portion size. So if you want to determine a new portion size, calculate the total volume or the weight of the recipe and divide it by, an equal portion size. So monitoring the food production. A critical area of competence and consistent execution in any restaurant is the preparation stage. Not having those consistent standards and proper systems in place has a direct effect not only on your food cost, but also on your guest dining experience. Some things you need to monitor closely when you're monitoring the food production area. Your quality standards. Make sure standards and the standardized recipes are being followed. It is also essential that recipes are well written with the accurate yields. Don't allow production employees to stray from the standards. And also put some, exercises together for quality control, such as taste testing, quality checks, line checks. It's all the same thing. You're checking your food before it goes out. If something seems off, don't serve it. If there's an issue, you got to be able to backtrack and find out what's causing that issue. Maybe spices were improperly labeled and they used oregano instead of basil as a dried spice. Something like that. You also need to manage the production process. So food production must be constantly monitored, not only for quality and quantity, but also for waste and other practices that may impact your cost. Quality controls should be in place, as well as observations of two other things. Your customer. Are there any quality or portion issues? Either don't talk directly to the customer, or you talk up with your servers. They're the ones going back and checking all those customers. So make sure you talk to them and see how people are liking the food. Then also your worker output. Is prep being done in a timely manner and in the correct way? So a little more to the worker output. So in addition to monitoring the food, you also need to monitor the production levels. So a par chart, something we have right there with it, and also a diagram of the station, so you know what needs to be there at all times. So you look at this example, they have a slow night or a busy night. Usually something like this would also be followed up by the day of the week. As you see this place, it's double, or 3 pans, 6 pans, so they're half as busy or half as slow or twice as busy, however you want to look at that, according to this bar chart. And like I said, and the station diagram, very important to show how the station should be set up. Not only that, all utensils that are needed with it will help keep the cooks in their station, in their place, being able to produce more work instead of running back to the dish and grabbing a ladle or something. The book also talks about, at this point, it talks about snacking, not allowing employees to snack, and that can get out of hand by doing the quality checks, your line checks. You will find some employees like to snack more and blame it on quality checks, and that's not the case. There was something else they talked about in there. Oh yeah, not letting employees eat the mistakes. Once they see they're allowed to eat mistakes, they might be more inclined to accidentally make a mistake in order to get some free food. So ensuring proper holding temperatures. This is pretty basic stuff. You serve hot food hot, cold food cold. When you think about serving hot food, maybe think about warming your plates or having a warming lamp while you're waiting for your servers to come back and deliver that food. When you're thinking about cold foods, maybe you even need to watch your production levels. Maybe make less more often to make sure stuff stays at the proper temperature. And then utilizing your carryovers. So a smart manager knows not to throw away quality food if it can be used in another way. Many operations get pretty creative when using carryover production or food that has not been previously, or that has been previously produced but not served to customers. So I know the book gave an example. One chain introduced potato skins. Another fast food chain adds their leftover burger meat to chili. Definitely a real popular one is bread being into croutons. One that I've used most is soup. Soup is very common. It uses a lot of different ingredients that you have left over. That's why soup of the day is usually little combinations of what last night's popular dinner was. So the next bit is monitoring beverage production. I don't go too deep into this. You go into great detail in the wines and spirits class, so I'm just going to kind of graze over some stuff. So there's a lot of the same principles as in the beverage production process as the food, especially those standardized recipes. So some things to do to monitor your quality standards. It says set up standards, describe them in detail in writing. That would be making standardized recipes for drinks. You want to establish those policies and procedures to meet the standards. Provide the required facilities, equipment, and environment to deliver the standards. Train and educate all bar staff. And then review and monitor employees periodically and always provide feedback. Coach staff on how to perform specific tasks in order to meet the standards. So to remain profitable, an operation must be able to track what's on hand, what it's paid for, and at what rate the product is being used, and where the product is at all time. This is just like our food. A lot of it is it's very similar. So if there is a problem, just like in a food cost, you take your actual cost of sales, calculate your ideal, and look for that variance. Where is this money being lost? And then that way you can track back. Maybe you just dropped that bottle of tequila and that's why that's way off. And then maintaining some costs. There's always going to be a difference between your actual and ideal. What it really comes down to is what is an acceptable variance. So overpouring, underportioning, that's always going to happen. Now managing inventory appropriately does reduce cost. So two other things to think about. A good business does not allow anyone but managers to give away free drinks. Some bar people will do that. They already know what the drink is. They're going to just tell the customer what the price is, pocket the money. Another way to make it look like they're putting the money in the register is using the no sale button. That usually just opens up their cash register to give change, but that also makes it look like maybe you did take the money and put it in there, and it also leaves the cash register open to have money being taken out. So down below I do have a few pictures of things that will help with production costs. So these are little spouts that you can put right into the alcohol bottles, and like this example that I found, each different color represents the amount of alcohol that's being poured. As soon as you tip that bottle over, it will automatically pour out a ½ ounce, and it will stop at that. And you also have jiggers. So these are all different sizes, different alcohol fits in there. I'm sorry, different amounts. And same with this one, it just kind of looks like a big shot glass, and it goes off different, I think it goes ½ ounce each one of those rings. So that's one way of maintaining the cost and standards on your alcohol portions. That's all I have for this week. There is also a lot of other supporting materials. There's a couple other videos and worksheets that will help with the assignment. If you guys have any questions, please email me. Have a great week.